I guess, first just welcome everyone. This is our meeting number 11 of the Environmental Justice Council. Hi. Before we get started, I will pass it to Kessel. Can you hear me?
A little closer to the mic.
Can you hear me? Yeah, is that better?
Okay, good. Thank you.
So welcome to our 11th meeting of the EJ Council, the Environmental Justice Council, and I'll pass it to Kessel for some logistics.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kessel John. You cannot see me, but I am here in the back, and I work with ERG, a contractor supporting this effort. So I'm going to start the meeting with I'll be providing the Zoom logistics for everyone. So first of all, this presentation is available with virtual interpreters in Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, and ASL. I'm going to now ask our audible languages to switch into the English room and give some brief instructions on selecting the interpretation icon in order to hear that language. So if our Spanish interpreter could please hop on and say something.
If you would like, si necesitas interpretación en español, por favor haga.
Thank you. Portuguese.
Alô, boa noite, sejam bem-vindos à nossa 11ª reunião, e eu gostaria de dizer que teremos o benefício do uso da interpretação virtual. Para aqueles que desejam fazer uso da interpretação, basta clicar no ícone do globo na parte inferior da tela e escolher no menu de cascata o idioma desejado. Obrigada. Thank you.
Cape Verdean Creole.
Spanish, sorry, Kessel, I think the Spanish one, we couldn't hear the whole thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Jose, do you want to pop back onto the English channel?
Sí. Para los que necesitan interpretación en español, por favor, ir a la parte inferior de la aplicación de Zoom. Hay un globo que le pueden hacer clic y pueden presionar la opción de Spanish para escuchar la interpretación en español.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Zelinda, our Cape Verdean interpreter.
Yes, hello. Yes. Hello, good evening. My name is Anilda. I'll be your Cape Verdean interpreter for the evening. Alô, sim, boa noite. Meu nome é Anilda. Também serei os intérpretes de Cabo Verde durante a reunião. E nós gostava de dar boas-vindas a todo alguém que estaria presente na nossa reunião. E nós gostava de informar, mas nós também oferece serviços de interpretação para Cabo Verdeano, para português e para crioulo de Haiti. Nós podemos selecionar aquele ícone de globo que está no fundo da tela e nós selecionamos que língua ou idioma que nós gostava de escutar. Obrigada. Thank you.
And Haitian Creole.
Si ou moun ta reme jwen tade sakap di la Creole haïtien, li ka klike sou ikon interpretasyon et puis choisi Haitian Creole.
All right, thank you very much. There is also in-person interpretation in Spanish, Cape Verdean Creole, and Haitian Creole. If you have any questions, please go see Aaron at the front table. Zoom attendees should be able to use the interpretation channels indicated by the globe icon to select your preferred language. English speakers should select the English language channel so they can hear any translated comments. Closed captioning is auto-generated. If you are a virtual attendee and would like to use the telephone audio for this meeting, please click on the small arrow next to the microphone icon, select Switch to Phone Audio, and follow the directions provided. Virtual attendees, if they face any issues, can send an email to meetings@erg.com. That will be dropped into the chat shortly with any technical questions relating to the logistics. If you would like a translated version of this presentation or of the agenda, please go to the Environmental Justice Council website, which will also be linked in the chat shortly. This meeting is being recorded as well and will be available later through a link that will be posted in the Environmental Justice Council website in a couple of weeks once this has been processed. If virtual attendees have questions, they can be submitted through the Q&A box, or if you would like to make a verbal comment, please raise your hand and I can unmute you. If you are commenting in another language, please speak into your language channel and the interpreter will translate the comment into English. And if a question is asked through the Q&A box, I will read it aloud to our council members. In-person attendees who are asking questions, please make sure to speak into the microphone. We'll pass one around so that virtual attendees can hear your questions. Finally, for anyone who is speaking, both council members and people who ask questions, please speak slowly to accommodate the interpreters. Please use simple language and minimize the use of acronyms. And finally, I would like to remind our council members to only use the chat function for meeting logistics and for no other communication, in accordance with open meeting law. We are also asking that all council members leave their cameras on for the whole meeting. Now I'll turn it back over to Maria Belen Power to go over the agenda and roll call.
Thank you. But first I want to do a couple things. One is thank the Cape Verdean Association of Brockton. This is our first in-person meeting while I've been here. There was one in Chelsea before I joined the administration, but just really grateful to the Cape Verdean Association of Brockton for hosting us and to ERG for making it happen with all the logistics. And we will do roll call and approval of minutes. And then I would love to introduce and welcome Representative Dubois if she would like to give a few remarks. So first, I will go through roll call and make sure that we're all here or that we have quorum. So Kalila Barnett. Here. Madeline Fraser Cook.
Here.
Melissa Harding Ferrari.
Present.
Cheryl Hawley.
Here.
Caroline Hahn.
Here.
Namrita Kapoor. Lydia Lowe.
Here.
Marcos Luna.
Here.
Peter Maffey.
Here.
Maria Belen Power here. Sophia Owen. Jen Salonetti.
Here.
Pat Spence.
Here.
Ari Zorn.
Here.
And Miles Gresham.
Here.
Great, thank you. So thanks, everyone. Next, we're gonna do the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So if I can get a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So I think that was Melissa.
Sorry, Melissa Ferretti.
Yeah, thanks. So Melissa moves. Do you want a second? Marco seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we need roll call?
And no one opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? So the minutes passed. So and now next I would like to introduce Rep. Dubois. This is her hometown and I'm really grateful to be here with her. So if you want to say a few words.
Hi, everybody here, and to the members at home and here, I want to welcome you to my district. You are in the heart of the 10th Plymouth District here in Brockton. It's Ward 5A. When we did the redistricting, I picked this up. It was a big effort for me. And the reason it was a big effort for me is picking up 5A and picking up one other precinct has made the district that I represent a minority voting opportunity district. So welcome to each and every one of you. And then I just wanted to, should I wait for an interpretation or should I just keep going?
No, it's happening.
Okay, great. And so many of you help my community so many ways, different members in formatting the environmental justice law and fighting a power plant from coming here to Brockton for many years of effort. And I'm just grateful to each and every one of you. I did file the environmental justice law and worked on it with most of you, many of you, to get it passed up at the State House. I filed it in my first term, and then I filed it all the way up until it got passed, along with some colleagues who were champions of environmental justice up at the State House, but mostly because of many of you at this table and on this Zoom, we were able to pass that legislation. So I want to encourage you to take that that mantle and that power that you have as members of this committee and really work it to your fullest degree and your fullest potential, because we have put so much faith in each and every one of you to always put environmental justice in the needs and the rights of people of color, those oppressed, low-income people, communities that are not English speaking as their first language as a priority, because we know that those communities are the targets for all the polluters and all the bad, and that we do not have the power to stop them. And you guys, it's almost like you're a superhero team, have been brought together to ensure that we make some progress here. And we're doing it in Brockton. EJ is my #1 priority. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to working with you more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rep. Dubois. And so now we will move to comments or questions, concerns from the public. So we have a few minutes, either in person or virtual. If folks want to raise their hand, right, Kessel, raise their hand virtually.
Yes, you can raise your hand if you would like to make a verbal comment, or if you put your question into the Q&A box, I can read it aloud. We had one comment from David Dow, who said, "Speak up for English translation." Apologies for that. We were adjusting the mic settings here. Please let us know if you have difficulty hearing.
And so are there any folks with their hands raised virtually? No.
I do not see anyone with their hands raised.
Okay. And anyone in person? No. Great. So we can move on to the next step. And we will, if people come either virtually or in person and they want to ask a question or share a concern, there will be another opportunity before the meeting ends. So next is the Environmental Justice Council, our mission and meetings and level setting, just so we all know what are we doing here and how are we advancing environmental justice? And I guess what is our calling, right? Like what is our mandate? And so I will open it up. I guess let me share sort of what the mandate is, right? And there's two things, sort of big picture. One is to provide recommendations to the secretary, right? As it relates to environmental justice. That's sort of a broad calling or mandate that could mean a whole lot of different things depending on the areas of interest that we would want to focus on. And then the other one is the definition, just providing recommendations for updating the definition. So the question, yeah, so I guess I'll open it up to the board, the council members on maybe one is what would in an ideal world, what would council members want to do with this space? We're meeting now every 2 months. We have the schedule set up now for the rest of the year of 2024. And we have a list of locations where we'll go in person. So we'll work with ERG to help us book those, figure out those logistical questions. But so we have the schedule, we have the locations. And so what do we want to do with that space? How do council members want to utilize our time, their time, in between meetings, during meetings? And if there's any questions or unanswered sort of confusion or areas where you want more clarity on the council, this is sort of a space to do that, to discuss that. So I'll open it up to the council.
Undersecretary, I think there are a lot of changes that are happening around policy or being proposed in a number of different working groups across, whether it's legislature or EEA, related to permitting and siting, for example, or even give new energy infrastructure. And I wonder if this might be an opportunity in some cases, maybe it's a future meeting where we might be able to hear some of the proposals and get feedback as well, or provide feedback formally in for those?
Yeah, that's certainly an option. So my colleague, Mike Judge, is the Undersecretary of Energy, and he is convening the Council on Siting Infrastructure, right? CCCS. It's a really long, it's an acronym, but it's really the Commission on Siting Reform or Siting of Energy Infrastructure, and how to meet the moment. So that is one option, right? Like we could ask my colleague Mike to come and give a report back or a report on how that's moving and have the council provide feedback and then have him sort of take that back and incorporate that feedback into the recommendations of the council, of his council. There are a couple folks representing environmental justice, which is great, but I think this space provides even more sort of added opportunity to provide feedback. So I guess maybe that's a question to the whole council. What do you all think about that? And is that a model that we could use for other things? If you all want report backs from agencies, from commissioners, issue areas, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. In addition to what was named, also, we provided some input into EJ strategies for the various agencies under EEA. And so it would be great to get an update on the status of those, to what extent ours or other public comments were taken into account. I don't know, I feel like that's something that should happen at least annually.
Sure.
Second both of those things, and as someone who works at an EJ organization, I think in addition to those pieces, our organizations are being asked for a lot of input on a lot of things, and we cannot be in all of those spaces and all of those processes. And so I think if it is possible to use the council space to be a convening space to gather some of that.
It looks like it's hard to hear.
Oh.
Is it all?
Sure. So I think in addition to what was said by Caroline and Kalila, in terms of citing of infrastructure and the recommendations on the EJ strategy, I think a lot of us are being asked for input on things like the grid modernization proposals, sort of all, and the kinds of recommendations that we are making, I think across the board are things that would come from many folks on this council. So I think potentially having thematic things that where both members of the council and members of the public or our organizations can provide feedback, rather than having to play whack-a-mole with all of the different structures that exist would also be helpful. And I think the one other thing, and then I'll wrap up, is just as we are thinking about the EJ definition, I can't help but think about the moment that we are in terms of the rollback of rights on the federal level. And so thinking about the strategy around not only how do we update the definition, but are we prepared to defend it?
other council members think about this idea of using it as a report, as a space for reporting, for the council to hear from, and I guess the council and the public, because these are public meetings, to hear back from other commissions and agencies, and maybe have that space of feedback, receiving feedback, asking for feedback from the agencies. Oh, I see a lot of hands up, sorry. So Melissa, Lydia, and then Peter.
Hi, thank you. Melissa Ferretti. I mean, I think like you said, I'm sorry, I didn't see who it was that had just spoke, but I think that, you know, we have a lot of layers here. So I think trying to not only, like you said, do the definition of environmental justice in itself. And, you know, I think the benefit of this commission is that we have a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures, right? We have Native people in this group and others. And I think it might look very different from one community to another. So I do agree that working and collaborating and coordinating with the other entities and the other departments regarding siting, permitting, and all of that is really useful. But it's a lot, right, to process. So it's kind of hard to say, well, what is our mission? We're here to make recommendations, of course, but the recommendations might look very different from my perspective as an Indigenous person and a Native person who living on my homelands my entire life, who, you know, for just an example, takes advantage of food sovereignty. And, you know, I live off the land very often, as does my family sometimes. So I think it's just, it's a lot to process. So I think we really do have a lot of thinking to do as far as, you know, what is our mission? What are we doing? And how, you know, how can we all add to the conversation in a meaningful and valuable way? So I don't know, as if obviously I don't have all the answers, but I do like what we've heard so far. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Lydia?
Yeah, I like the idea of having themes or focuses or, you know, on certain agencies or certain areas of, you know, environmental issues. Because I think it was when we heard from the whole task force and all the departments, it was a little overwhelming. That would help us to maybe prepare, but then we probably have to also balance that with we're trying to travel around the state and to different communities. And so we probably need to be flexible and make sure that there's also a focus of the particular concerns of the community that we're visiting.
That makes sense. Thanks, Lydia. Peter and then Jen.
So Peter Monte, and wanted to just provide my support to all the comments that have been made. Suggestion I have, similar to what was just said, it's about the people at the end of the day and the impacts to them. So part of this is gathering the feedback from the agencies and groups about any potential policies for us to make recommendations. I would also welcome some practical feedback from community health groups, health communities, health centers, because oftentimes in our communities, they tend to see an aggregated view of the real life impact of environmental justice and are able to provide that holistic, impactful commentary around what they are witnessing. And I think hearing that would give us and reinforce a lot of the recommendations or insights into which areas to focus on. So I would welcome that too.
And so you mean community health centers, not DPH from the state?
Oh, in addition to DPH. So I think DPH will have a view. Community health centers would have a view as well.
Thank you. Jen?
Hi, Jen Salonetti here. I appreciated Lydia bringing up that it would be helpful to not have several agencies or group speaking on multi-topics that all relate to EJ at a given time. It has been pretty, my experience with that has been pretty overwhelming, and I'd like to be able to be better prepared for specific topics. And then a question that I have in general is for us to, I would like to understand better what the accountability structure is for any recommendations that this council is making. So is our role to give recommendations and it just ends there, or is there an expectation for the secretary or specific agencies to be at the very least providing an update? What is the follow through of our recommendations? I think it's important for us to be considering.
Yeah, I think those are really good questions. And items that we can consider as we focus on the different themes and areas. So as we get report backs from agencies or commissions, to be thinking about that. Other council members? So do folks generally agree with this sort of strategy of moving towards, I'm hearing one theme per meeting? Because there will always be the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting and then public comment period at the end of the meeting. Some answers if possible, but then the sort of the in between, I guess, is the theme. The feed from the EJ Council. Oh, this one right here. So am I hearing one theme per meeting, right? And also allowing for time to hear about the concerns in the communities where we are going to be physically, where the meetings are happening. So there will be public comment, and in between there will be one theme, and then plus maybe an issue, maybe someone can come and present on an issue, a local organization that is happening in that particular community. Great. Yes, Marcos.
So this is Marcos, and I appreciate hearing the point about not being overwhelmed with too many things at once. I think that's, I thought I had a handle on things and I was a little overwhelmed too. But I also am eager to the extent we can, stay on top of the EJ strategies that are being proposed by all the various agencies. And there are, more than a dozen entities who are putting forth strategies. So that would probably stretch the bandwidth of the council, but I still would like some kind of report back that maybe we could, we just kind of be that point of contact where we're sort of keeping an eye on that. So I think this kind of ties into Jen's point about an accountability structure. So I think we have to kind of create one, at least in terms of staying on top of what our promises are being made and to see how progress is happening, as well as, clarifying what is the accountability structure for recommendations that we might make or put forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think the EJ strategy will be that, will be one, I guess, of the tools for accountability to check in with the agencies internally. And those could be, we could arrange them to be themes, right? So is it food? Is it energy? Is it air? And I did want to acknowledge my colleagues here, which I forgot to introduce, but Caroline Lemoyne from my office, Deputy Director of Environmental Justice, Janine Simpson from DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, Madeline also with DEP. Thank you for being here. So DEP might be one of the agencies that we would ask to come and give us, whether it's the commissioner or someone else in her office, to come and give us a report back, or maybe an update on how they are implementing the strategy. And another, the cumulative impact assessment that will be released soon, the regulations might be another theme that we want to hear back from them on how they're implementing or how that is being rolled out. So I guess my question is, can the thematic, if we're doing by themes, can that be sort of, we can use the strategy, the EJ strategy as a structure to follow how agencies are implementing environmental justice? And can we see that as a way of structuring agency by agency or theme by theme? Did you mean something else? No. Kalila and then Marcos.
Yeah, this is Kalila. Just a couple of things around that. I think one challenge is like the set of, updates and talking about kind of current important discussions and topics that we want to use the council as a space to weigh in on. And my question is, how do we actually make reasonable progress on updating the definition? Just given that it's hard, just because of the amount of time that we have, it's hard to accomplish. So I'm curious about how do we balance both of those important areas?
Yes. Thanks, Kalila.
Madeline.
Oh, Madeline and then Marcos.
Thanks. I might be going a little bit on a tangent here, but as we were talking about themes and kind of how we're engaging with other agencies, I started thinking about this forum and the fact that these are public meetings, and we are going to be holding more of our meetings in person in places. And how are we better about community involvement, community engagement, and preparing communities for how to meaningfully engage in these conversations? What are we asking them to consider, or to think about, to give feedback on, so that when we do have these conversations, we are confident that we are getting feedback from community, getting input from community, and having a truly public meeting and public discourse. And so I think it's gonna fall on us to figure out what kind of that outreach strategy is, kind of broadly, because people can join virtually, but also very locally. Like, how do we make sure that folks are even aware that these meetings are happening, and that they feel confident that they know kind of how they can enter into the conversation. So I think that dovetails with the agenda setting, the agenda setting for these meetings, and kind of how we communicate what the themes are and who has input into the conversation, and then by extension, how effective the EJ strategies are across agencies.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of engaging not just this group, but the public. Having an
So yeah, I think that's just it's gonna take some work, I think, and some thought on our part in terms of how you do that effectively. So that we're not recreating the wheel every meeting, but we have kind of an agreed upon process, and know who's responsible for what, in terms of active outreach and engagement, and how that dovetails with the agendas that are created for each meeting.
Thank you, Madeline. Marcos, I think you were gonna go next.
Yeah, this is Marcos. So I think what I wanted to say on that point, and touches on what Madeline's saying to an extent, and also what Peter brought up in terms of who we're hearing from as we do these meetings. I mean, we're trying to do a lot of things at once, but I agree that we need to be centering what we're promoting, which is community engagement. So I think we're getting better at that in terms of allowing time for anybody to give input on this, and that's an opportunity for us to hear what we're here, to listen to what we're hearing, because ultimately we have to amplify that, right? I think that's one of the things we want to do, and this could play into a better approach to both the engagement over these issues, in terms of how the conversation goes to model that conversation when we're reviewing what government is planning to do, what agencies are planning to do, to kind of create that dialogue, that opportunity for dialogue. And also in terms of the definition, I think ultimately we want input from people, their thoughts about what's working, what's not working. So, it's on us to be doing all those things simultaneously to some extent, keeping notes and thinking about what are we hearing and how is it reflected or not reflected in the definition, right? That's one of the core things that we're supposed to do. So anyways, I see these things as compatible, and I see them as opportunities to build on.
Thank you. And I mean, not to throw another idea in, but I will. I've been going to some of the listening sessions that the Black Empowerment Advisory Council, the Latino Empowerment Advisory Council, and they've been holding listening sessions across the state. So it just makes me think about,
Hello. Sorry to interrupt. We've gotten a request from an interpreter to speak up. So remind people to do that. Thank you.
yes, hi, can you hear, is it better now? So I guess the question is, do we want to do listening sessions, to listen to what the different communities are facing, their issues, their struggles, their concerns around environmental justice? So one would be really talking back to me. One piece would be listening from the agencies, right? Like, how are they implementing EJ? And then the other piece could be listening from the communities. How are they seeing environmental justice play out in the communities that we are going to be in? I'm not sure that we could have both in one meeting. I guess just wondering how that lands with people in terms of having listening sessions where our only purpose is to listen. It's not a sort of back and forth. It's not a answering questions. It's simply just to listen to their concerns. And yeah, I mean, I would assume that would inform how we're thinking about our role as the council. Madeline and then Peter.
Can we, I agree that listening is really critically important. I'm wondering if we actually ask the question of what's more useful for folks, a listening session puts a lot of onus on folks to kind of come to kind of let us know what they're experiencing and where they're seeing some opportunities, where they're seeing challenges, and that's great. But what if community wants more of a dialogue or does have questions, or kind of leaving it open, like asking the question, what is most helpful, what is most beneficial to communities around this conversation? Is it just, is it for us to listen, which I think, again, of utmost importance, or is it something else that we haven't thought of, but that we can kind of leave it open for communities to structure the conversation as they would find most helpful and useful? So just asking the question, I don't know. So not just assuming, saying this is going to be a listening session, but, are listening sessions what you want? And if not, what are other mechanisms or ideas that you have to bring to the table about how the conversation can be structured?
Thank you. So I think Peter had his hand up and then Lydia.
I do, yes, and I did actually. Listening, absolutely. I think that's table stakes, and then moving beyond that. The conversation around accountability, I think, is key here. How are we going to actually make the impact and move things forward after we've listened. Because we would want to provide some kind of circular feedback in the sense of, for those who are stating what their concerns are, there's the expectation that we're doing something with it. We're making recommendations, and coming out of those recommendations is the aspiration for change. So coming back to the accountability question, I think it's important that we are comfortable that and through these listening sessions, we're able to make the impact we hope and are expected to make.
Thanks, Peter. Lydia?
Yeah, I think the listening sessions are really important. And again, I feel like one of the issues has been, how do people learn about these sessions? And, so far, I think unless there's a community partner that's really doing outreach on the ground, it's just kind of like a small core of people who are really like following all EJ stuff. So, which is that's valuable to engage that group of people, but I think we want to reach out beyond that too. And, so I think one way is, by having the different traveling to different areas and really reaching out to community groups that are doing work on the ground in those areas, and emphasizing listening and hearing from those communities about what the major concerns are, but also even before the session asking, is there a particular request from this local community that you really want to hear? You really want to make sure DOT's there, or you really want to make sure, whoever, Fish and Wildlife or Energy or whoever is, should be there. And then I think, in addition, there is a purpose to having theme sessions, which, in general, I like that we have listening in the beginning so that people don't have to sit through our whole meeting in order to speak. But with theme sessions, it might be that we want to hear from certain agencies first about what they're doing, and then have, listening from the public after that, as well as our own questions. So I think that, to me, a lot of the key is really doing more outreach, and, that word has to get out there in advance so that people actually know what's the content of what they could be talking about and what we might be presenting.
Yeah, and by agencies presenting to us, they're presenting to the public. And so that's also
this is Kalila. I'm curious. So we're meeting every 2 months. So that's a total of how many meetings a year? 6 meetings a year? Yeah. Okay, great. And so I guess, is it helpful to you all right now? I don't know, maybe if we just even try to get a little bit more specific, like we're talking about themes, but there's like so many different directions. Would it be helpful if we like generated some ideas about what those themes might be?
Yeah.
That could then help us to figure out, I don't know if the specific geographies for the meetings have been decided yet, but based on some of our knowledge, we, could know that in a particular area, there is a theme that's a challenge that folks are facing, like maybe just sort of. Yeah.
So, so the geographies have been, I think we talked about it at the last meeting, and then before that, there was sort of a brainstorm of the communities that people wanted to go to. I don't remember them right now, but there are about 10 or 12. And so that makes it like 2 years of meetings, every 2 months. If we wanted to go back to the once a month, we could. But if people wanted to do work in between, right, then we just have to take that into consideration. One of the themes that I heard was, Caroline, around citing the commission. So that could be one, right, that we hear back from Mike Judge and his office around the commission, right? Like an update, where are you all at? And then we could hear from DEP. So if, maybe let's do that for a couple minutes right now, 6:48. And then I'll provide a couple an update, and then Marcos added an agenda item. So I guess what are some themes? So I heard citing being one of them. What are other themes that people want to hear from agencies around updates or EJ strategy, or how they're incorporating environmental justice into their daily work? Madeline.
I'll just go ahead. I would say another theme is how the public can engage in their outreach and community engagement processes. So many of these projects and programs have a requirement to engage with community, and often people don't really know how to do that. And at least with announcements about public meetings, sometimes it doesn't reach the people in community or the right people at the table, as Ari noted in one of his comments. So maybe one of the themes that we can have are where do people go to even know how to engage in the agency's programs? I think that's kind of a difficult one for a lot of people to really navigate. So some clarity around that would be, I think, helpful.
Thank you. I do want to know, I can't see the messages or comments, or if there are comments in the chat, if folks want to either raise their hand and read it, or if Kessel, are there comments in the chat?
There are, this is on, okay, great. There are some comments. I was going to add them to the Q&A session at the second one. Also, while I'm on the mic, Miles, if you want to turn on your video camera, then others can see you and you have your hand raised.
And there are no comments from the council members, right, on the chat?
No, Ari Zorn responded to one of the comments saying maybe some of those questions will be answered with the community listening session. Reaching the communities is key. Getting the word out is always a challenge. Getting the right people at the table is harder. Oh, and somebody said that speakers in the room are still very faint. So if we could, once again, have people lean into their microphones. Thank you.
We will keep trying. Thank you. Are there other themes that council members want to hear about in our next few meetings? I'll give you a menu of options. So, energy resources, Department of Environmental Protection,
GPH.
even with DPH is not within our secretary, but we can certainly ask them to come and to share with us how they're using environmental justice as a framework. Even within DEP, there are several different bureaus that we could focus on if folks were interested in. And I see Miles.
Thanks, Maria Belen. Sorry, my internet is a bit spotty, so that's why I'm going to remain with my camera off for most of the meeting. So I just want to kind of reiterate what I believe was Peter brought up around like accountability and follow-up after listening sessions. Listening sessions are great. And as Madeline articulated, there is some difficulty in getting folks to show up because they don't know how to connect. But speaking as someone from a grassroots organization who does turn out for information sessions all the time, a big reason that people don't come is because they have absolutely no faith that anything is going to come from it, right? It's just like, we're going to listen, we're going to hear, from some Black and brown people, and then we're never going to come back, right? And we're just going to check a box and go forward. So if there's not that accountability and that follow-up, the listening sessions really won't be as useful as they could be. But also, I want to just say something else that might be really helpful is to, in some of these sessions, point people to the resources that are available through EJ carve-outs, through the money that the Commonwealth is going to be getting through, the federal government for all of the different like green infrastructure projects that are going on. So any kind of way to connect people in EJ communities with the resources that are, supposedly earmarked for them would be really helpful in a lot of these sessions. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria Belen. This is Sophia. I think, yeah, seconding all of that. I guess I wonder if rather than just like if the frame in terms of to allow us to both think about how and whether people are coming to the meetings, but also the accountability piece is to frame it around like how we're around the concept of meaningful involvement or meaningful engagement, because that is part of the EJ mandate. And that's the idea for folks who don't know, that you don't just make a process more equitable and accessible to people, but that the outcomes actually change based on what the people most impacted say and need. So I like to think about from this frame because I think it does then force us to think both about like how are we as a council accountable to community, how are we holding the Secretariat accountable, and how are we making sure that like as we are doing all of that, we have the processes in place to ensure that folks can show up, whether it is to our meetings or to the meetings of the various commissions and other agency like hearings and permit processes. And also just in the interest of not recreating the wheel, there is a report that was pulled together by the Attorney General's office that makes a bunch of recommendations on how to better address barriers to public engagement, both at the Department of Public Utilities and the Energy Facilities Siting Board. And a lot of those recommendations came from organizations like ACE, Green Roots, Neighbor to Neighbor, and others who have a long history of engaging with community. And I think if you haven't read the report, you should look at it. There are a lot of great recommendations in there that could be used both for the council in terms of thinking about engaging folks, but also that, we can refer agencies and private stakeholders also to think about when trying to get people to come to meetings. Because I think the last thing that I'll say is that the hard thing is that because our system relies on us playing whack-a-mole or not having a holistic approach to things, we're asking community members and residents to show up for a meeting sometimes every day of the week, right? And so just being mindful that people may want to engage and just simply can't come to all of the meetings. So making more ways for people to give input that doesn't necessarily mean having to show up at a meeting.
So I think this gives me a little bit of homework. And for the next, I guess, let me ask, would folks be interested in hearing from the Siting Commission during our next meeting? And maybe there's a sort of, Sophia, I don't know if you would want to maybe share some of those recommendations before or after Mike reports back or shares so that there's a connection. And now, and so we can keep thinking about what are those themes, and folks can, let me know or bring them up at our next meeting. But if there are themes that you think we should definitely focus on, yeah, make sure to share them with us. The next piece is around the EJ strategy. And so the environmental justice strategy is going through its final steps, I hope. So it is, what every agency has been working on, sending it over to us. How are they implementing and incorporating environmental justice into their work? And so the hope is to have it released to have it go out really soon. We have to, make sure it goes through sort of the proper channels internally. And then have a rollout of this public document that will be, part of the accountability mechanism, I think, of how our agency is implementing. So I know folks from DEP are here and they've done a lot of work on their EJ strategy. So has every other agency, but also Caroline of working with back and forth with the agencies to finalize it. So the update is that it's coming soon. Really, really hoping in the next month have that be released. Do folks have questions about the EJ strategy? Marcos? Nope.
Just when you say the EJ strategy, do you mean like, is that the compilation of all of the different agencies? That is what you're calling the EJ strategy?
Yes. So EEA, the whole secretariat-wide environmental justice strategy is a compilation of every agency, including our office, the Office of the Secretary, but also every agency and even office, so like the MIPA office, CZM, other agencies in office under the secretary. All of it together will be one strategy. Marcos?
Yep. That was my question, because we were going to hear from DEP. I was curious, what's happening with the other.
Yeah, I use DEP as an example mainly because they're here, so maybe they won't ever come again to our council meetings. But I had mentioned DEP as one agency, an example who could come. I mean, the environmental justice strategy will be released, right? Like it will be available. But just following in the theme of having agencies come and report to us how they are implementing it and how it's going, like a progress report sort. And all of you having the opportunity to ask questions. That's what I meant by DEP or any other agency to come and report on their strategy, which you will be able to read, but it's sort of the opening the opportunity to question and answer with the agency. So that's my
has her hand up. Sorry, not your
thank you, Cheryl.
This is Cheryl Holly. So if this is the final environmental justice strategy, then what will be the impact of listening sessions and community comments, and then us reporting back to these agencies if the strategy is already in place? Is it just the implementation or the strategy itself that we would have some sort of impact on?
Yeah, so there will be progress reports and updates that the agencies will have to do. So this is the final strategy. A draft went out. There was public comment that came in. Each agency worked to incorporate those comments. So this is the final, this is the EJ strategy for the state, for our secretariat. And there will be opportunity, well, not only opportunity, they will have to show progress year after year. And so I would say this is maybe an opportunity for them to report to us how the implementation is going. And then that could feed into the progress report, which I think is also part of the accountability mechanism. And it will have to be updated as well. I hope that answers your question. So now Marcos Luna had requested the agenda item on the environmental justice definition. So Marcos.
Into the microphone. Okay. Thank you, Marie-Belen. So this is subject matter we've already talked about, but I wanted to offer something concrete to start us off on a conversation about how to do the assessment of the EJ definition, which is one of our explicit charges in the legislation that created the council, as well as the EJ definition itself. And so the legislation had some pretty ambitious timeline for doing that assessment and not a whole lot of details about how to do it or what exactly that would look like. So I've drafted a memo. I brought paper copies with me, and I sent an electronic copy to Maria Belen to circulate.
Ooh, I did not circulate it.
Okay. You
But
want-
maybe I could
I can summarize it. I mean, it's not terribly complicated, but
share it after
yeah,
the meeting.
okay. And I have copies here, so we can distribute those after those too.
Okay.
So essentially, the point of it is that I propose that we have two options, and the order of them could be either way, actually. One is that given the fact that the definition for the environmental justice population is the culmination of 20 years of work by a lot of advocates and stakeholders and legislators. Rep. Dubois was an important person involved in that as well. So we have a lot of work that went into it to craft what's there. Not to say it's perfect, but rather to point out that the law is only about 1.5 years old at this point, and so it's only just been codified. And so I think that it's a little odd to assess it from the get-go. That's why it ended up in the law. But so one thing we could do is, as a starting point, we could, as a council, say whether that we affirm the definition as it stands, as we understand it, in principle, that it follows the basic principles of environmental justice as the legislation laid out, as a starting point, as a kind of a show of faith in the direction of the legislation, and then to follow up with that we begin a formal process of assessing it, so that we propose a working group or a subcommittee. I'm not sure of the proper language or organization of that, but that would work specifically on bringing together a subset of the committee and inviting testimony or comment from experts, from community groups, from advocates, from public health groups, like Peter pointed out, to kind of weigh in on that. And then we can do a more formal kind of assessment, and also the progress of the law. I mean, again, it's just passed. So one of the questions is, does it work, right? Is it accomplishing what we want? We can't answer that yet. It just started. So we have to do that anyways, I think. So I think that we do certainly need some kind of formal process to move forward on that. But I also feel like it's just weird to be expected to report on this now at this moment. So it's going to take us some time to do this. So if we feel the pressure of time to say something about the definition, then I propose that we issue a resolution or a statement of the council affirming the general definition in terms of the direction it's going in. But if folks are not comfortable with that, then I think we need to properly recognize it's going to take a little bit of time to do it properly, to get the input, and we need to organize a subgroup to do that. So there are kind of two proposals in there. And again, I think we could go either way. We could affirm it now and then work on it, or we could work on it and make a statement later on. But that's what I wanted to lay on the table.
Thank you, Marcos. And then both of them together, right? Like affirming and working on it.
Right.
Thanks for sharing. What are, yes, Caroline?
I'm just wondering if we might be able to even build on that, because I do think that, just initial thoughts are that I like the idea of affirming and trying to use it to run it through its paces and understand, like, what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths, but can we at the same time also maybe make a much more clear and accessible process for exceptions? I know that there is a perspective that within the law that there can be an exception process, so that if there is a community that's left out, they can apply. But I don't know that there is necessarily a clearly defined way of doing that that's outlined. And maybe that's something we might be able to define at least some way, so that we can understand potentially what are some of those exceptions and actually use that to better evaluate.
So did you want to share I guess you'll share it with us in paper, and since they don't have it, I'll share it tonight to the whole council. And maybe come next meeting, and I guess how would you like us to respond to your proposal or to your questions?
Well, I mean, I think if we decide to move forward, well, we have to decide how to process and how to do the assessment of the definition. That has to happen no matter what. So I think one thing that'd be easy to act on would be to say, let's put together a working group or a subcommittee to focus on that, and then decide how do we want to go about evaluating that. On the question about whether the council feels comfortable issuing a statement or resolution affirming the EJ definition as it stands, that's something we could decide at the next meeting easily, right? It's a very short proposal. And then the committee, we could do that now, or we could also push that to the next meeting as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Sophia. I think, yeah, thank you. I will just say I'm happy to co-hold the working group with you, Marcos, if that is helpful. As someone who put a considerable amount of energy into the process that went into creating the definition, and I know that there are questions and concerns that have been raised, and so do want to have the space and time that we need to evaluate those. So I guess my 2 cents is I would like to see us do the evaluation thoughtfully. And I think potentially in between this meeting and our next one, try to pull folks together to start the conversation with the working group, so that we have, if there are other, if we want to have additional people talk a little bit more, to give folks who weren't in the trenches on this some of the perspectives that would be helpful to think about the definition, that we are able to do that for the next meeting.
And if there is a working group, I think one of you, maybe Marcos, said to bring other experts who may want to share their insights or their knowledge on how to evaluate it or how to assess it. Okay, so I have that we can just, so we'll share this draft and then decide at the next meeting whether or not to adopt it, right? And to
This is Kalila. The draft is just what you just told us, but it's just written down, correct? So it's a proposal for how to proceed. Okay. I thought I saw Jen.
Jen.
Hi, Marcos, could you clarify what the difference between what you're proposing is to the working groups that we discussed, the 5 working groups that we discussed last time and signed up for? There is a group called, I'm just looking at the notes actually. There's an EJ definition working group. So is that different than what you were speaking to today?
No, I just wanted to make it concrete. I just wanted to write it down and say, we all agreed to this.
Okay.
Pushing forward, but I also wanted to put on the table the option of the council saying from the get-go, we believe that the definition as it stands is moving in the right direction, or if not correct. And we plan to do this in-depth evaluation. So just because as I look over the legislation again, just to clarify again what our mission is, what our purpose is, we were supposed to have had an evaluation back in July, which was not reasonable, of course, but it was a tight timeline. And so, if there's a sense that we should be saying something to affirm it, for example, in case there's a sense that we're sort of in doubt about the thing, or it's that we really don't have any kind of attitude toward it or opinion, I don't know if we want to convey that or if it matters. Or if we are, just not worried about the timeline and we take our time and we do it right. What I wrote down was basically two things. Was one, would we want to just say up front that we agree with the direction, we agree with the definition, and we're going to evaluate it. If not, if folks are not comfortable with that, then we just proceed with putting together a formal working group and start laying out some process for how we're going to move forward. So Jen, yeah, I'm reaffirming that point. So not to reinvent that point, but I want to just write it down and get it moving because it feels, I move slowly, but it feels a little slow. So.
Thank you, Marcos.
So is that okay? How does that sound to council members? And then this working group would be an official working group of the council, and so we would just make sure that we're sharing it and letting folks know that there will be a meeting and providing interpretation as an official working group of making sure that we're abiding by open meeting law for this working group, because the assessment of the definition is a mandate within the council. Okay. Any other questions or comments? So we'll share that with the council. And we can talk about it or if folks have comments or edits that they want to propose, then also taking a vote at the next meeting. Along with the other things that we want to do at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
So thank you, Marcos. I think now we'll go to public comments or comments from the public, if there are any. Yes, go ahead.
Is the microphone working? Are we good? Awesome. All right. So my name is Michelle Dubois. I'm a state representative here in Brockton, and listening to this meeting was just so amazing. And I want to commend each and every one of you and thank you for being here in Brockton. Brockton is the only municipality in Massachusetts that's majority Black person populated. We are a majority minority voting opportunity district in 2 of our 3 state representative seats. Our city has been replete with environmental justice hazards for more generations than I've been. My family's been here 5 generations. They were immigrants here and from Italy, Ireland, and France. And so the idea, what's most dogging us, in my opinion, is electric transmission infrastructure, asphalt, brick, and concrete siting in communities of color, low-income communities, meaning people just set up shop and somehow it just gets to happen for years. I would like the committee to focus on asthma, childhood asthma. Brockton has one of the highest childhood asthma rates in the state, and you'll find that through environmental justice communities. So it would be wonderful if this committee took that as a focus. When you talk about the environmental justice definition, so since I already told you I was the person that drafted the environmental justice bill with many people and filed it with many other reps, but I was a lead filer in the House of this bill. I think in the original draft, I didn't even have the committee having any comments on the environmental justice criteria because it took so much work to get to a place with the environmental justice criteria and the percentages that I just really felt that type of regulatory oversight should be promulgated by elected officials and not by appointed officials. No offense to anybody on this committee, but really because the other charge of the committee is so important. You've been chosen by many important, intelligent people to represent your communities and our communities, and you come with this wonderful knowledge of different areas of environmental justice in our communities in Massachusetts. And I really, as one of the drafters of this, my intent was that you would focus on those issues that are most pressing and push the administration in the areas and the ways through that environmental justice lens that you all possess to do what's right by the people. Because the percentages, when you look at it, if you get too wrapped up in how the definition of environmental justice is defined in the law and make that the biggest charge that you have, then Brockton is never really going to get our issues with illegal asphalt, brick, and concrete figured out. Then, you know, we're not going to be pushing asthma and childhood problems as a protection, and we'll just be, you know, arguing about semantics, because what the issues are is this environmental hazards are being placed in low-income communities and communities of color, and the devil is in the details. So there are a lot of different groups that are trying to change or restructure how we view environmental justice, and the devil being in the details. If you don't have enough time to really dive in, I really feel strongly that the current definition with the 4 different criteria is wonderful, and you should take a vote saying that you support the criteria. And I think that you should be focusing more in on how the state of Massachusetts is actually mapping the criteria, because I see errors in how the state is actually looking at the 4 environmental justice criteria and extrapolating that into a map. And then take some time and think about how we apply the environmental justice criteria for benefits of community involvement, but then how we are going to distribute the financial incentives as part of environmental justice. I really believe that that's where we should be diving more deeply into the 4 criteria and saying that we're not going to limit the protections, because the state law gives the protections and there's nothing hopefully anybody can do about taking those away. But what we're going to do is, when we're looking at the benefits, we're going to look at how different census blocks qualify as environmental justice communities as we're distributing the financial benefits to them. Because if it just so happens there's an EJ community in an extremely wealthy municipality, those folks sure as heck should get all the civil rights and environmental justice protections that are laid out in the law, but maybe they don't need the $3 million brownfields cleanup money, because they have different type of environmental justice criteria that is qualified for them. So I just want, there's a lot of people out there that want to use this committee, in my opinion, to try to muddle what environmental justice is and how it's acting in our state, because it's to their financial benefit to keep our eyes on bureaucratic processes and not on what's actually happening in the communities that are causing our kids to have high asthma content and all these other things. So it would be my vote that we would approve the regulations and the standards as they are set right now, and look at how the state is actually mapping those out on paper, and then take your time and build protections in local communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rep. Dubois. This is a great example of how someone who came to the meeting can also comment at the end of the meeting. Oh, is there a hand? Yep. Yeah. Yes, please come on up. Yes.
And I need to introduce myself, or?
Yes, please.
formal Process. So my name is Nadia Madden. I do work for the state of Massachusetts, but I'm commenting solely as an individual citizen of the state. I think what you are starting to do with going around to different communities and, you know, talking about listening and having different ways to really engage environmental justice communities, I think that's really important. I think we need more of it in the state and in the state processes for all of the different things that you would like the mandate for it to actually come to life. We need to do a better job in many, many different ways. And I think you're helping to set some guidance and some processes that other parts of the state can follow. So I think that's a very good thing. So thank you for starting to work on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anyone online, Kessel?
Yes, we have Alan Rousseau with their hand up. Alan, I'm going to give you the ability to unmute yourself. All right, you should be able to turn on your microphone now.
Okay, hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name's Alan Russo from Gardner, Mass. And Gardner, Massachusetts is a small city in north central Mass. And it has a largely environmental justice community, both in terms of income and minority populations. And I heard a couple of very important concepts from your discussion tonight that I thought worth commenting on further. You know, one is the outreach to the public, which is important for any effort, no matter what the subject is. And I think you've got to be really aggressive with your outreach. In my community, folks are largely unaware of environmental justice, largely unaware, people I talk to. And I think you have to be aggressive to the extent of doing residential mailings. You know, we just went through an election season out in my neck of the woods, and the postcard mailings I got on a weekly basis were unbelievable. And I think if you want to really get to the public, you can't rely on local newspapers. Our newspaper out here in the area has declined steadily over the past 5 years in subscriptions. Websites require people to know where to go to look. Social media is, again, a limited audience of people on platforms like Facebook. So I think, you know, I would advise you to be aggressive on the communication if you want this effort to be successful, so that people are aware that environmental justice exists. You know where the populations are, and I think that's where you've got to target the mailings to those people. The second concept is follow-up. You know, I heard that from a couple of the commission members here tonight. Extremely important that results are showing up after people have been made aware and after you've had the listening sessions. And you know, out here in Gardner, we're facing a landfill expansion of our sludge landfill. And I do think that what we need is better solutions from the state in terms of how to address things like wastewater sludge disposal and not relying on landfills anymore and all the ill effects of landfills.
Okay, thank you.
So that's my input.
We need to move on. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're
Alan.
welcome.
We have several comments in the Q&A, and I'm going to just read them aloud. I'm not sure if we have time to respond to each one. So yes. First, we had a comment from Wendy Murill, who asked, may we ask roughly how many people are in attendance in person? Someone else said, it is still a bit difficult to hear, but that was over an hour ago, so I'm hoping that that has been resolved. There are two questions or comments from David Dow. The first one is, how does the EJC and Mass EOEEA plan to create more housing units in a standard lot space determined by town government regulations so that affordable housing is available to our service workers and seniors? And he said that this is a follow-up to Sunday's Boston Globe Spotlight team article. The second comment by David Dow is, how does the Massachusetts EOEEA and the EJC propose to address the joint effects of climate change and nutrient pollution on fresh and marine water quality, which are overseen by grassroots, state, and federal regulatory agencies, and funding of community resilience directors / community NGOs who implement grassroots solutions? There are then two comments by Wendy Morrill. I apologize if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly. The first one is that I am concerned that conducting listening sessions spread out over 2+ years will only further delay meaningful environmental justice action. And then the second comment is, It seems to me that meaningful action on environmental justice should go beyond updating the definition to incorporating a benchmark policy which will not permit risky or polluting businesses to be established in EJ communities. A community that has been designated as EJ has most likely already historically been marginalized, exploited, polluted, and abused. Therefore, the designation should automatically protect from any more of that going forward. There is then a comment by Grace Bennington, who said, "How long has your committee been in existence? I'm curious since you're still deciding on the definition of environmental justice." Then we have Mary Ann Bibinski, who commented, "Outreach and meaningful community engagement are important. Some of the comments made tonight by council members to clarify the process for EJ populations across the state, connecting EJ populations to their resources, and providing for accountability are very important in my opinion. The soon-to-be-released EJ strategy is an important part of this undertaking. Thank you for your comments." Then we have Rosemary Wessel, who commented, "First, hard to hear hasn't really been resolved. Oh gosh, I'm sorry about that. That was me. Anyone there live is much harder to hear. Apologies for that." And then Sarah Freeman asked how many people are attending online. I can tell you that much. There are 19 attendees currently. And those are all of the comments in the Q&A box. If anyone would like to make another comment or, oh, actually, we're almost at time. So I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kessel. We are definitely at time. We have 1 minute left, but really, I don't think I have any immediate answers to the questions. If council members want to respond to anything that stuck out or that you want to comment. The question around the definition is part of the mandate of the EJ Council. I think there was a question around how long we've been around the EJ Council. This is the 11th meeting. I don't remember exactly the month that it was convened, but I can definitely, we can get back to you, to him. And yep.
I think one thing that is important to note is that, so this council has only been in existence for, I think, 1.5 years. But the EJ executive order that was passed by the Patrick administration is now almost 10 years old.
Could you please speak closer to the mic?
Sorry. This is Sophia, just a little bit of history. So this council has only been around for 1.5 years. It was created by the passage of the big climate roadmap law in 2021. But there was an executive order that was passed by Deval Patrick after many years of advocacy by lots of folks, including some in this room. And that was about 10 years ago, and there was supposed to be a council created then, and it was not. So to the point around, while I have the mic, to the point around both wanting to balance listening to community and making sure that we are taking action. Wendy and others, I'm right there with you. I'm eager for us to actually be holding the Secretariat accountable. So I'm hoping that as we are thinking about the balance between listening and recommendations, we are able to ensure that we are actually meeting the moment that we're in.
Thanks, Sophia. Anyone else that wants to respond? So this is, we've come to a close. We're going to close out the meeting. The next meeting will be in January, and we will be resharing. I think the council members should have a hold on their calendars on that second Thursday, I believe, of the month at 6 p.m. And we'll be resharing the locations of where the next several meetings are going to be at. You do have the the calendar holds. Okay. Yes, January 11th. And the location is Mashpee. And there will be a Zoom evaluation question at the end of the webinar. And so if folks that are on Zoom can stick around to fill out the evaluation, that would be great. And this webinar will be posted on our website. And we were just talking before we got started to hopefully also share it with the local channel, the local news channel. And so I think Kessel, are you dropping the survey into the chat?
The survey should pop up when the Zoom window closes.
Got it. Okay. And so with that, I don't think I need a vote to close out the meeting. But thank you all for coming and for joining us on Zoom. And we'll do some follow-up in between. Otherwise, we will see you in January, and happy holidays and end of 2023. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You.
Good night.